All right, welcome back to the podcast. Now it's time to head up to Gainesville to get all the intel on the breaking news over the weekend. Billy Napier finally replaced as the Florida football head coach. Kind of a move that we thought was coming. It's just a matter of kind of when, and the when became on Sunday morning when Billy was relieved of his duties following the win over Mississippi State. No better person to talk to all things around this situation than Kevin Brockway, the Gainesville Sun. Kevin covers the Gators every day of the year, and he's very dialed into what's going on up in Gainesville. So, welcome in, Kevin.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, it was inevitable, and kind of interesting. It happened over a win, but if you were at that game, it didn't feel like a win. I mean, they were up 20-7 in the fourth quarter, almost let the game slip away. I mean, there were Fire Billy chants in the stadium after they punted the ball back to Mississippi State. But give credit to Mekhi Burrow, came up with a big interception late in the game, and they held on and squeaked out that 23-21 win.
Take us back to last week when the reports came out that there was a meeting between AD Scott Strickland and some prominent boosters, and the kind of the message was either you fire Billy now or the financial commitments may not be where they need to be down the road. Give a little sense of how that came about, and just was it was it one person kind of making those demands? Was it kind of a group of boosters represented by one guy? Give us a little sense of how that all happened.
Scott refuted that, which I thought was interesting.
Okay.
But I do think that there were some meetings. I think the meetings probably had more to do with, hey, look, if we're going to have to buy this guy out, we may need some help because, as of that $20 million buyout, 10 is going to come within 30 days. So, I think it might have been more along those lines, or what the boosters could do to kind of help the situation. I think Scott kind of had his mind made up after the Texas A&M game that this wasn't going in the right direction,
Right.
and basically from there, it was just a matter of thinking in regards to the bye week. I think they wanted to try to give Billy the full season, but I think they realized, and especially the way, like I said, the crowd situation where the Mississippi, that it was just too toxic to go on. And you figure that you give the interim staff the bye week before Georgia to get
Right.
reorganized. From a timing perspective, I think that works pretty well.
And it also gives the other big thing, it allows Florida to openly negotiate with somebody who maybe doesn't have a job, i.e., a John Gruden, somebody like that, if they wanted to talk to somebody who's not currently employed somewhere else. And it gives you a head start on the behind back channel discussions and all the stuff that goes into those things with agents and all that stuff, potentially of who you want to bring in. Obviously, Scott Strickland made a very much a point in his press conference to say he wants a guy with a winning background or a winning, a pedigree. That probably eliminates assistant coaches and coordinators that maybe haven't been head coaches. Give me a sense. Is Scott Strickland? Do you get the sense is this big game hunting, or do you really think they're looking for the best football coach?
I mean, I think what they're looking for is someone that's going to win championships, but I do think that it would be a hard sell if it was like a group of five guy like an Alex Golish. I think that, and I think in the back of their minds, they may realize that. Now, listen, I think that Lane is the obvious, front running choice. He would win the press conference. But I think they'll do their due diligence in their background to see what kind of fit it would be. I think Eli Drinkwitz is another guy that certainly has had success in the SEC.
Yeah.
I think in general, you need a schemer. I think what the Billy Napier hire proved was he wasn't really, because everything that Dan Mullen wasn't. Like, Dan obviously was a very good game coach, but wasn't a program builder. And they brought in Billy, who was a program builder, without really fully investigating in terms of, how he would run his offense, the fact that he
X's and
called his own
O's.
plays
Yeah.
and wouldn't let go of that. I think the coaching in this league is too good. You need someone that's going to be a good game manager, a good schemer, and then, hope he grows into being a good program builder as well. But I think what Billy Napier did in setting a foundation for that, I think will benefit the next coach greatly.
Do you get the sense that there's the financial commitment from the university? Obviously, it's going to be a big commitment to pay off Billy Napier, but now you have to then come up with the money to be able to pay a Lane Kiffin or whoever you end up hiring. That's probably going to be in the $8 to $10 million a year range at least, plus the NIL resources needed to pay the players. Is Florida? Give us a sense of where Florida's at, maybe relative to other teams in the SEC compared to all the revenue.
Well, yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why they met with the boosters too, was because of that, like, the financial commitment. But I think it's there, and I think it's tricky. And I mean, listen, on top of that, they're going to be, going full steam ahead with the stadium renovation. Um, but this is a state with 22 million people. As you know, the University of Florida, I mean, it's a vast network of alumni, even throughout the country. It has the power and the resources to come up with the money in a state of 22 million people to do all this. It's just going to be a matter of how they deploy those resources, and if they can get the right guy, which has eluded them for the better part of a decade and a half.
The tricky part is if you're trying to get a guy that's got a current job, i.e., a Lane Kiffin, an Eli Drinkwitz, you may have to wait. I mean, unfortunately, you may have to wait because they could potentially be mid-December because of a playoff run and all that stuff. So, how much of a timeline? I mean, again, do you get the sense that they're going to publicly make Lane say no? I mean, I think Lane's clearly the number one target. They're going to probably back channel it and make Lane have to say no at least once, if not a couple of times, with whatever offer they're going to try to put together. How do you get the sense of how they're going to handle the this next 6 7 weeks?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting because of the transfer portal window now is a little bit later. It's January 2nd. So that works in their favor a little bit. I think ideally they would like to hope that a school like an Ole Miss or Missouri falls out of the college football playoff picture, right? So that they could hire a guy like that. I'll give you another under the radar name that's interesting, and that I've heard through back channels that Florida may be interested in is Rhett Lashley at SMU. Another
Okay.
guy, very good schemer, got the Mustangs to the college football playoff last year. Now has power for coaching experience because they were in the ACC last year.
Right.
And I think the spread works pretty well in Florida because of the speed. And I think that might be something that maybe in their back of their minds, because Urban Meyer was a spread coach, Mullen was a spread coach. And you look at those two offenses were both successful in the SEC as a result.
Is this 100% going to be an offensive head coach in your mind, or is there any chance there's a defensive head coach?
I mean, I think a slight possibility if they could convince a guy like Dan Lanning, right? But I don't know if there are too many great defensive coaches on the board, really, that you can say with confidence. I mean, Marcus Freeman, right? At Notre Dame, that's a possibility if you can woo him. But I think the fans want offense; they want excitement. I think Billy Napier suffered from very similar to the Will Muschamp syndrome of thinking you can win a game 27 to 24 to 17 in college football like you can in the
Right.
NFL. I just think, with college kids, there's too much margin for error for that. You got to try to score as many points as possible because you never know what's going to happen. And I think that was the problem was that conservatism, and what do Will Muschamp and Billy Napier have in common, both Georgia background, and that old school background just doesn't work in today's college football.
Last couple, I'll get you out of here. Is there anybody in the Florida family, i.e., a Steve Spurrier or anybody like that, that Scott Strickland may lean on for advice, for recommendations, for a temperature of the fan of the booster base, the financial guys that will help fund this?
I mean, I'm sure Spurrier, they'll get his advice. I mean, another interesting candidate, if you want to go that route, would be Jed Fish at Washington, excuse me, former Spurrier GA. Has had some success at Washington, certainly another very good offensive coach. Brian Schottenheimer now obviously is with the Cowboys. He's
Right.
doing decent there. So that ship may have sailed. But yeah, I don't, it'll be interesting to see, who they canvas, how they canvas. They've, also going to get advice from a search firm called Turnkey as well. So There'll be a lot of people, that will consult, but Scott's made it clear that he's the one that's going to make the ultimate decision.
And then the last one, I'll get you out of here after this one. All the speculation down here where I'm at in Tampa, John Gruden. Has there been any scuttlebutt about, the again, home run hire would probably be a pretty good asset from a recruiting perspective. We know offensive acumen he's got. And what has been the chatter in and around Gainesville about a potential John Gruden?
I think my one trepidation with Gruden is like, how long has it been since he's been a college coach? And it's just different. It's kind of like the same thing with college basketball coaches going to the NBA. We saw it with Bill Belichick. It's not working very well. An NFL guy going to college. That would be my trepidation. I have not heard anything, specifically about John Gruden, but, he's a Tampa guy. He's itching to get back into the game. And, would be, he's a pretty good offensive schemer too, but you just don't know how that would translate. I mean, Bill Belichick was a great defensive schemer in the NFL, and his North Carolina teams can't stop anyone. So there's a lot to it, and it's a lot different dynamic dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds and dealing with grown men as well.
All right, Kevin Brockway, Gainesville Sun, great job. You can find Kevin's great work. He'll be covering this search from start to finish at Kevin Brockway G1. He also covers the Florida Gator basketball program. Obviously, another big year in store there for the defending national champions and Todd Golden. So check out Kevin's great work again every day. And as this search starts to percolate here in the coming days and weeks, Kevin is the guy you need to be following and reading up on his great work with the Gainesville Sun and elsewhere. So, Kevin, appreciate the time, and we'll stay in touch as this moves forward.
All right. Thank you.